Sarah's hands shook as she stared at the files on the screen, her face pale in the blue glow of Alexander's office. All the patient records showed the same strange pattern. Dozens of them. All with the same doctors. All with the same sad ending. What are you doing in here? Alexander's voice, usually warm and kind, now sounded cold and sharp. Sarah didn't turn around. She couldn't look at him after what she'd just found. These patients, she whispered, her nurse's training making the pattern clear. They didn't die from surgery problems. Someone took their organs while they were still alive. The door closed with a soft click. Sarah heard Alexander's footsteps crossing the marble floor of his home office, the same floor they had danced across barefoot just 3 nights ago, celebrating their engagement. You shouldn't be looking at those files, Sarah, he said, his voice calm again. Patient privacy is important in our work. Our work. She finally turned to face him, this man who had come to Chicago Memorial 6 months ago as its biggest donor, who had wooed her with kindness that seemed too good to be true. You're not a doctor, Alexander. What you've done is necessary, he finished, walking to the bar across the room instead of coming closer to her. Would you like a drink? I think we should talk this through calmly. Calmly? The word felt bitter in her mouth. There's nothing calm about what you've done. Alexander sighed, pouring himself a drink, the same fancy scotch he'd shared with her on their first date. You're seeing this all wrong. Those people were already dying. Not all of them. Sarah's voice grew stronger. Patient 37. Carlos Delgado. Came in for simple gallbladder surgery. Patient 42. Lin Wei. Broken leg. Patient 55. Maria Gutierrez. Appendix pain. None of them were dying. But all of them were poor, without insurance, with no family, he said smoothly. And because of them, 6 rich patients got the organs they needed. 6 useful people continue to live, to make jobs, to help society. So you just took them. Killed them and sold their organs to whoever paid the most. The horror of it hit her hard. A small smile touched his lips. My charity doesn't sell organs, Sarah. We help find matches. The money is just a donation. Sarah's back pressed against the desk. How had she missed it? The strange money coming to the hospital. The private wing that only Alexander's special cases used. The patients who vanished from the system. You fell in love with a monster, she whispered. No. He walked toward her now, putting down his drink. You fell in love with someone with vision. Do you know how many people die waiting for organs? The system doesn't work. I fixed it. By killing people. By making tough choices. He reached for her hand, and she pulled away. The hospital was going to close before I stepped in. Thousands would have lost healthcare. You would have lost your job. I saved more lives than I took. The worst part was how he made it sound almost sensible in a twisted way. The police won't see it that way, Sarah said, reaching into her pocket where her phone had been recording everything. Alexander's smile didn't fade. There's no signal in this room. I made sure of that, for patient privacy, of course. Her heart sank. Of course he would have thought of everything. I really do love you, Sarah, he said, his face showing what looked like real sadness. When I met you, I thought maybe I could have something normal. Something real. Was any of it real? She asked, hating how her voice shook. All of it. That's what makes this so hard. He reached into his pocket and took out a small device that looked like a remote. I need some time to clean this mess up. What are you going to do? Fear gripped her stomach. Kill me too. Take my organs like the others. He looked offended. Of course not. You'll just sleep for a while, and when you wake up, you won't remember the last day. He held up the device. This erases short-term memory. One of my companies made it to help people with trauma. Sarah ran for the door, but Alexander was faster, grabbing her arm with surprising strength. She hadn't realized how strong he was, his nice suits and gentle manner had hidden it well. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," he said, raising the device. Desperate, Sarah grabbed the nearest thing, a heavy glass paperweight, and swung it hard. It hit Alexander's head with a terrible sound, and he fell to the floor, blood spreading on the white carpet. For a moment she stood frozen, staring at him. Then her nurse training took over. She checked his pulse, he was still alive. She'd only knocked him out. Sarah's mind raced. She needed proof, something real that couldn't be erased or explained away. She turned back to the computer, but it was locked. Without Alexander's password, it was useless. Then she saw his desk drawer, the one he'd always kept locked, the one she'd found the key to hidden in his pen holder just minutes before he caught her. With steadier hands now, Sarah took the key and opened the drawer. Inside was a leather book. She opened it and gasped. Names, dates, blood types, organ details, prices. Hundreds of entries in Alexander's neat handwriting. And worse, names of doctors, hospital bosses, even police who had been paid to ignore it all. It was a record of death and corruption going back over 10 years. Long before he'd ever met her. Long before he'd become a billionaire. This was how it had all begun. Sarah grabbed the book and Alexander's phone, then paused. She could leave now, take the proof to the one detective she trusted, Jackson, the one who'd never seemed impressed by Alexander's giving. But what if Alexander woke up before she could reach him? She noticed the bar, where Alexander kept medicines for his long flights. A plan formed in her mind, grim but needed. 10 minutes later, Sarah left the mansion, the book and phone safe in her bag. Behind her, Alexander lay unconscious, tied to his heavy desk with his own handcuffs. She'd never asked why a businessman needed such things in his bedroom. The shot she'd given him would keep him asleep for at least 6 hours. She'd been careful with the amount, using her medical training to make sure it wouldn't kill him. She wanted him alive to face justice. As she drove through the gates, Sarah's phone got a signal again. Right away, she called Detective Jackson. "I have proof of many murders at Chicago Memorial," she said, her voice steady despite everything. "And I know who did it." "Where are you?" Jackson asked, suddenly interested. "Driving downtown. Alexander Valentine is knocked out at his house. He'll need to be arrested before he wakes up." "Valentine? The hospital donor?" Jackson sounded shocked. "Sarah, do you know what you're saying? I'll show you everything in person. Meet me at the police station in 20 minutes. The aftermath and justice, 4 to 5 minutes. 3 months later, Sarah spoke in court, her voice steady as she told everything she knew about Alexander Valentine's organ-stealing network. Behind her sat the families of victims, both those who had died and those who had unknowingly received stolen organs. Detective Jackson, who had indeed been honest, sat beside her lawyer, his presence showing that not everyone could be bought. Alexander wasn't there, he had been kept in jail, seen as likely to run away or hurt witnesses. His lawyers had tried to paint Sarah as an angry ex-girlfriend seeking revenge, but the proof was too strong. The book, phone records, and the money trails that FBI accountants had found told a story of planned murder disguised as medical miracles. "When did you realize what was happening at Chicago Memorial?" the prosecutor asked. Sarah looked right at the jury as she answered. "When I found the pattern. Every month, at least 3 patients without insurance would have problems during simple procedures. Their organs would vanish from the medical records, and within days, rich patients in Alexander's private wing would get transplants from unknown donors." "And you were engaged to Mr. Valentine at this time?" "Yes." Sarah touched her empty ring finger. "He proposed 2 weeks before I found out the truth." "That must have been hard," the prosecutor said with practiced sympathy. Sarah thought about the nights she'd spent afraid to sleep, jumping at every noise, knowing that Alexander's network was huge. She thought about the security team Jackson had arranged for her, the safe house, how she still couldn't work as a nurse because the memories hurt too much. It was, she agreed simply. But not as hard as what his victims went through. After her testimony, Sarah didn't talk to the reporters outside the court. Instead, she met with a small group of victims' families who had asked to see her. Among them was Marisol Gutierrez, Maria's sister, who had been trying to find out what happened for over a year before Sarah's evidence broke the case open. "Thank you," Marisol said, hugging Sarah. "You gave us answers. You gave us justice. Justice, but not peace." Sarah knew that would take longer. Later that evening, as she got ready to return to the safe house where she would stay until the trial ended, Detective Jackson handed her an envelope. "What's this?" she asked. "The victims' families. They've started a charity, a real one this time, to help patients without insurance get care without risking their lives. They want you to run it." Sarah stared at the offer. "I don't know if I can. Every time I go into a hospital now." "You don't need to decide today," Jackson said. "But remember, Valentine took enough from you. Don't let him take your calling too." Sarah nodded slowly, putting the envelope into her bag next to the journal she kept now, her own record of the case, a reminder of both horror and courage. Outside, the city lights shone, the same view she had once admired from Alexander's penthouse. She had thought then that she was seeing the world from a special place. Now she understood that true sight came not from height, but from clarity. The willingness to see things as they really were, not as you wished them to be. Tomorrow, she would go back to court. Alexander's empire kept falling apart, showing more victims, more helpers, more corruption than anyone had first thought. The work of justice had only just begun. But for tonight, Sarah let herself imagine a future beyond court and trials. A future where she might help make sure that desperate people would never again be easy targets for monsters pretending to be heroes. It wasn't a happy ending. Those belonged in fairy tales, not in stories that began with blood on white carpets and evidence held in shaking hands. But it was a beginning. And for now, that was enough.